Welcome to Inkwell Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny on location in the U.S., United States Virgin Islands. I'm your host, Reggie Legend, and I got my guest with me, Brandon Vinson. Brandon, salute. How you doing, man?
I appreciate it, man. Great to be here today. And let's start this off right. Dr. Brandon Vinson.
My fault, doctor. I see you represent Chicago in the background, man.
Always in my heart, no matter where I am.
Where you at these days? It's kind of hard to keep up with you. Last time I talked, I think you were in my stomping grounds in Maryland. Is that true?
It's correct. Still at I love it out here since you ran away, but I'm loving. You got to appreciate the seafood and the locale and stuff like that. And I'm still down in Bowie State.
All right, good deal, man. So look, I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be as quick as I can with this. Not quick, but I'm gonna be to the point. I just want to jump right in and ask you my number one question for all of my guests at this point. Brandon, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I didn't expect anything less from you, actually. Was there ever was there ever a time when you thought differently, or what was the changing point for you? If there was a time before where you was like, nah, I don't got it, and then you was like, I got it though.
No, I always thought I was the way I was raised. It was always bred into me, myself, my cousins, that we were special in some shape, form, or fashion. And it was up to us to figure out what way our special traits and techniques would present themselves. It became apparent to me that I thought or I operated or moved differently when I was younger, when I would step back and observe how people would naturally follow me. And I asked questions as well. There's something about me, the way I project myself, the way I carry myself, and my thought process. So I always thought that I was a little bit more advanced in that respect. And I'm not to be arrogant or anything like that, but things always came natural or easily to me because of how I thought and carried myself. So I do think that I have above average intelligence. You can call that genius level as well. I don't think that there's a problem that I can't think through.
What is that movie that came out a couple of years ago? You just made me think of it with Will Ferrell. He was an alien. Was it? It wasn't Megamind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
With Brad Pitt. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, that's interesting. I appreciate that feedback, that background that you gave, because there aren't enough of minority young men. There's not enough people in general, but especially amongst Black men that were raised at a young age to be like, there's something unique about you in a good way, so that we can kind of combat what the world is going to try and tell us and dictate about who we are and put these limitations on us and put these stereotypes on us. And that's the main reason for me going through this interview session, is because there's a lot of people who have allowed the world to put these negative labels on them, because the first step that they should do outside of knowing their name is self-affirm and be like, no, I am this, that, and the third. So when somebody else that's trying to make their world make sense stereotypes you and typecast you, you can be like, nah, that's not who I am, actually, because
Right.
I accept nothing less than this label, this understanding of who I am, which is, in a certain sense, is limitless, right? We have more access to things that are beyond our backgrounds and our environments and our cultures than the things that are actually working against us. So here's my next follow-up question for you. And before I actually ask that, I just want to make a point of clarification. When I talk about genius, there are many different types, but it's not just specifically academic, right? And you kind of hinted at it earlier, because you was like, you and your cousins were told to figure out what it is that separated you from everybody else. Everybody's not separated from the bulk of people by academics. Some are, but not everybody. And so this kind of leads me to my follow-up question. Who comes to mind when you think of this word genius?
When I think of the word genius, it all comes back to family as well. It comes to my mother. Wow, she was not the one that had the all the academic talents that I may have had. She was a genius in navigating relationships and um, being self-serving. And the fact that she will, I'm sorry, selfless. I'll take that back. She was
I was like,
selfless.
okay,
Yeah, she was selfless in her manners of interacting with others because, as you pointed out, and what I alluded to in this, we were challenged as individuals in our family to figure out what our genius was because there was something there. We had that wraparound, holistic environment in my family that it wasn't just in my household; it was all throughout my cousins, my aunts, uncles, everyone. So, what I took notice of with my mother was how she was so open and a dynamic individual. People naturally gravitated to her because of her heart. Her genius
okay,
was her heart. And people to this day, after her passing in 2008, I still have a multitude of her friends reaching out to me, telling me stories that I never knew about my mother.
okay.
And that was the genius in her. She knew that that was going to outlast anything that she did on earth. It's just those connections she made with people. And I thought that was amazing. I still think that that's amazing to this day.
Yeah, I even see that in you. I see that there's a relational. I don't know that people put Hart and Brandon in the same sentence often. It's almost like the Grinch.
No, I did pick
Have
up.
this relational thing about you though. It's
Right.
charisma, and that's the thing that you said when you were younger. People began to gravitate around your leadership, and you would notice that. And I
Mhm.
see that as an inheritance from your mom. We'll talk about that a little later when we get into the components of genius. And
Okay.
so I appreciate that because that gives me some insight about you that I didn't know before. But let me do a follow up to the question that I just asked you about who comes to mind because you had a very specific person that was directly tied to you, which is good. Most people don't. Most
Mhm.
people have in mind someone that actually distances themselves from genius. And so my follow up question to that second question is this: who do you think comes to the mind of the world, most people in the world, when they think of genius? What does the average person, or who does the average person think of? Who do you think?
Come on now. One of the first who's going to jump off is Albert Einstein or Neil deGrasse Tyson or some of these Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, some of these individuals, again, who have been champion of industries when it comes to science, mathematics, technology, things of that nature. I'll also look at like uh, those in the money in the field of finance and stuff like that. Individuals who made monumental changes, or better yet, monumental marks in the world, usually tied to again advancement technology and finance.
So, Brandon, the thing that I like about your response about genius is that you connected to somebody that's close to you, someone who I mean, even your mom, you can say that you have. She's so close to you that you can say that whatever trait she has, some of that should be in you. That's just how the parent-child dynamic works. Most people, though, they don't connect genius to somebody that's close to them. They associate it to somebody far away. So your answer, your first answer of Albert Einstein, that's actually all the way accurate. Most of the people, whether I do one-on-one or whether I do workshops with kids, 20, 30, 300 people, universally they say Albert Einstein. And I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but what people do is when they associate genius to Einstein, somebody who they're like, I don't know what E equals MC squared is. Don't talk to me about what the theory of relativity is. I'm not going to pick it up. They disassociate and discredit themselves from this genius label because they've given it to somebody who is outside of their purview, somebody that's outside of their reach. And that's
And
what I'm here to correct, though.
and that was part of the challenge in my household. It was okay, recognize them for their genius, but also all genius doesn't look the same. I'll say Martin Luther King was a genius. I'll say Malcolm
Yep.
X was a genius. You have the genius in the finance industry and stuff like that, like Warren Buffett. And honestly, it takes that outside thinker who individuals who laugh at you in right now, but you make proof that your genius was relevant, i.e., Elon Musk. So it takes Richard Branson, individuals. It takes those outside thinkers to not only be challenged about their ideas, but to continue to move forward with them as well. So
Yes,
that's
sir.
genius is all over the place. You
It's
just have to
universal.
recognize it. Right. You just have
Yep.
to learn how to recognize it.
I tell people all the time, man, I look around and it's just like I see it all around me. And it's my job to help other people see it themselves. But first you got to see it in yourself. It's
Mhm.
almost like when you're on a plane and they say like, hey, if this air mask come down, you got to put it on first. Don't try and put it on your child because both of y'all gonna end up dead. Like put it on you first, and
Yeah.
then you'll be able to see clearly and think clearly to put it on somebody else. And so that's it's all about that self affirmation. And
Hey,
a lot of times when somebody will say, like if they say genius, that they see it in themselves, within the next couple of minutes, they'll say, I'm not arrogant. It's always got to self-correct. And it's not a matter of being arrogant. Like true humility is not just not thinking too highly of yourself, but not thinking too lowly of yourself either. People like forget that side of humility.
it goes to the idea about what I look at as self-worth and self-value. I know what I can bring to the table, and I'm not afraid of being able to share that. Now, individuals might take that as arrogance. That's not where it's coming from. On my side, I have to be my biggest champion because other individuals don't necessarily know that yet. And let's take it to the streets with genius. I look at it, I say it every day. Jay-Z is a genius.
Yep.
He did not take the normal route, whatever. Have turned his passion into an industry and branched off from there. Those are examples for individuals looking up to Jay-Z to say, you know what, I don't have to follow a pre-made or pre-established trajectory. I can create my own.
Yeah, and that's the key part of genius because once you affirm it in yourself and you begin to walk it out, it's not a self-serving thing. You now begin to minister to other people because they're like, yo, if they came from my environment and they're doing that, then I can do the same thing. Maybe not in that same vein, but I can find my own lane and then make something out of it. And so you mentioned something that I want to come back to because there's a quote that I want to tell you and see if you heard it before. But you say thinking outside of the box. And the box is the thing that really is the limiter for a lot of us, right? People love to put other people in boxes to help compartmentalize their world and make it make sense for them. But in doing so, you're damaging somebody who doesn't know who they are. You're damaging and limiting them by ascribing them to just certain box, right? And my challenge is to get people to think outside of the box, like you said. So here's a quote that can help us think outside of the box. You let me know if you've heard it before and let me know how it hit you. You ready for it?
Got it.
All right. It goes like this. If you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
No, I never heard that one.
Never heard it? How's that
Never.
hit you though?
It's I would say it's a bit profound, especially if how you apply it, and then honestly, the audience you apply it to, because they have
Yeah.
to be able to pick up on the subtle nuances of what's being said and how you hear it. But the idea is, again, it challenges individuals how to think, ability to
Yeah.
think. And if we touched on it a moment ago, again, the box, other people put us in it. That means sometimes we vision ourselves in that box. People can't put you in a box if you are in control of your own thoughts and your
Yeah.
own ambition, your own mind. They play into it. You don't have to play into it.
Exactly right.
So I'll climb this tree. I'll figure out. I mean, honestly, we started off as, I mean, if we're focused on evolution and stuff like that, go back in the past, we weren't able to climb trees. We weren't able to walk. We progress. Your mind has to progress. Your mind has to change. Your mind has to be beyond what other people think of you. And sometimes you have to think beyond what you think of you as well.
Absolutely.
And that's hard. That's hard. And you learn that through experience, challenges, and sometimes what you notice failures. But I don't really look at failures that way. I look, these are learning opportunities. Either I win or I learn. That's it.
Yep. So I like what you're saying, man, because I have an acronym that I use for, middle schoolers, high schoolers that talks about the word fail. And it's that FAIL stands for first attempt in learning. And like you said, it's not a fail as long as you learn from it. It's not a fail as long as you say, okay, let me push the envelope. Let me not retreat from the limit, but let me go towards the limit again until I push past it. And that's a mentality that more of us need to have, especially when we got odds that are stacked against us. I'm about to go deep here in a country that, African Americans started the way we did in a country that enslaved us, right? Those limits, they were limiting kings and queens, right? And it worked to the extent of we forgot what our true lineage was and began to just acquiesce to the limitations that they wanted to put us in a box. So when we start thinking about this quote, it's a metaphor about finding your element. Because a fish doesn't belong out of water, right? The element that the fish was designed for, streamlined with gills, streamlined with scales, the element is water. And so the goal is to get this fish back in the water and stop having it beat its head up against this tree, because the tree is the box in this metaphor in this quote, right? And if we don't get this fish back in this lane soon enough, what's going to happen when the fish is out of water for too long? What happens?
Yeah, it atrophies and dies.
It's going to die, right? And so I'm not talking about people physically dying. And in some instances, when it gets too extreme, that can happen when you're just not in your lane enough and you begin to have these dire thoughts about who you are and what you aren't. But I'm talking about reviving, revitalizing, resuscitating, rejuvenating genius in people. Like I'm like the dude from Sixth Sense. I look around and I'm like, all I see is dead genius around me, right? And I'm trying to challenge, like you mentioned the word, you gotta be challenged. I'm trying to put these videos out and this workshop out and this book out to challenge people to get them to unlock what's already on the inside of them. And most of the time they're already working it.
Well,
So
see,
you feeling me, man. Go ahead.
so to your point, like the idea of the fish beating head against the tree, that is the case with a lot of individuals. And I hate to say that, a lot of individuals that I've seen in our community where because they weren't able to think beyond the box or think outside of their current limitations, they've come to accept. And then when you get to that point, you become even more you become more of a detriment to yourself, but those around you, because your thoughts or your limitations can be passed on to these other individuals, again, stifling their growth and their development. So you need that individual in your life, family member and teacher, pastor, family friend, that always looks at you and says, I want to challenge you in this way and help you understand, like you talked about before, necessarily the failures. But I do this a lot with my goddaughter and any of the students I interact with. What did you learn from that experience? I don't necessarily care if you didn't necessarily reach your goal or whatever have you, but what did you learn that you can apply not only to doing this again, but also other areas of your life? That's the only way you grow. So
it's not about a letter grade. It's about what's your takeaway from it, right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about academics and that particular field as I have an example for us. But moving on into the three components of genius that'll help, you're already walking in it. I can tell just by how we're conversing, but I want to make sure sometimes it does take somebody to just put an extra little dimension to it and take it to a extra degree for you to be able to like, oh snap, like, okay, I see what my next move is. Mm-hmm. So what I want to do now, what we're going to do is just walk through the three components of genius that are in my book, according to your passion, your talent, and your purpose. But I'm going to do something interesting with passion, just like we kind of deconstructed genius and then built it back up to include the average person within it. I'm going to deconstruct this word passion too, though. So what comes to mind, Brandon, when you hear when you hear this word passion?
Something that elicits fire, fervor, something that speaks directly to me when it comes to passion. I'm passionate now about what I do at Bowie State University.
Okay. How long you been there now, by the way?
2 years in July.
Okay.
It's what when I say what I apply this to when it comes to a profession or something that you do, especially when it comes to your job. If you're passionate about it, it's no longer a job.
Yeah.
You're driving into work or you're driving into the office or whatever have you, and you don't have that anxiety like, oh my God, you have excitement because you know that you're going to be a change maker. That's what I look at as far as passion, something that drives you, that you just feel and passionate about to engage in, be it volunteering, be it outward speaking, or whatever it may be. It's
Yep.
what drives you, and it fulfills you to the fullest.
Yes, sir. It's the gas in your tank, right? It's the thing that it doesn't matter what you go against or who you go against, how big the system is that you're working against. You won't care. People are like, yo, I'm gonna get at this. I don't care if I walk away battered and bruised, but I know that I did my best. My head is bloody, but I'm bowed, right? So the thing about passion though, here's where I'm going to flip it on its ear. Most of the time, when we start talking to youth and young adults trying to get them on the right path. And we say, hey, look, when you get into your career, adults, we think we have all the answers to somebody that's younger. Like, hey, you know what? When you get in your career, figure out what it is that you love and do that. But that's not what I'm going to say. I'm going to come from the exact opposite spectrum of love and say, if you want to get into what your passion is as it relates to your genius, you actually should focus on what you hate. And here's why. First and foremost, I can't take credit for this. This came from a book that I read by Mike Murdoch called The Assignment. And he talked about, like, if you can figure out what's your Popeye moment, the thing that makes you say, I've had all I can stand, I can't stand no more. When Popeye got mad, he would get that spinach out and then wreck shop, right? Whatever was on top of him, he would then get on top of it. Most of the time it was Bluto, when he got to that point where he was fed up and couldn't take anymore. And what Mike Murdoch's message is that, hey, look, if you can figure out, you can look around you and say, what is it about my environment? What is it about where I work? What is it about my neighborhood? What is it about my family that I hate though? Because when you can identify that thing, and if you're always talking about it, matter of fact, sometimes, Dr. Vinson, the best thing to do is to ask other people, what is it that you say I would hate? Because we'll talk about it all the time. Whoever will listen will be like, yo, I hate when I see that operating. I hate when that happens. And you'll begin to say things like, somebody should fix that. And if you find yourself saying the same thing about the same, whatever it is, the system that's in place, like somebody should fix that. Somebody should, guess what? That somebody is actually you. Because it's impacting you in a way that's not hitting the next person. Sometimes you may look around and be like, that's not bothering nobody else. And if you can see something like that in your life where you got to speak to it, you got to do something about it, and you're like trying to galvanize other people to get in on what you see as a problem, then that's the thing that drives you. That's your passion. And that's what you should focus your career around. So tell me, Brandon, like at least one thing. Tell me something that you hate.
It's easy. Mediocrity. I hate the idea of settling for where we've been successful in the past, or just I hate the idea of just accepting.
Yeah.
That has actually, so to go with your point, that has motivated me through my career, to the fact that while I've had short tenures at several institutions, because the idea is I can't accept being around mediocrity. I can't accept the idea of not being challenged or challenging ourselves to advance, and always resting on our former laurels. So that speaks to why I have been successful and so fulfilled at my time doing Dooley State, where they have not been focusing on what we've done in the past. We're looking at how to move things down the road and around the corner. And that gives me fulfillment. That says that we look at a challenge, we say, how do we fix this? And it is based upon what I'm able to do with partnerships and galvanizing the troops and stuff like that. Say, you know what? What's your idea? Let me support that. That's what I like to see. They see that they get the support from the top down, and it's all about innovation. It's about thinking about what's best, not for us right now, but what it will be best for our future students coming to us down the road. That's where we are, and that's actually where we're making changes. Where we seeing growth in enrollment. Where
really, that's impressive, because in the education field right now, enrollment is down.
I'm at a point right now where my residence hall is full for the academic year already. I've already made my class, so I'm turning off my application. You don't hear about that at HBCU. You hear about stuff like that, our applications going all the way until the add drop period. No, I have to turn away undergraduate, transfer, and graduate students at this point in time. Say, you know what, we might have to talk about you starting in the spring, or you starting next fall. That is not the trend, not only around the nation, but definitely not with HBCUs. I just got back from a summit in Atlanta, where everyone's asking, what is the secret in your sauce?
Huh.
It's that. It's about understanding the student and actually providing the resources needed to get to where we need to be. That's what I love about where I am. If we don't focus on mediocrity, we
Okay.
move.
Now you know I feel like that was kind of subtle shots fired, man, because we worked together. We were colleagues. So you say you had to leave behind the people who didn't have any vision to
Well,
get where you needed to go.
let's be real. I got fired from Columbia, so there's a difference.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Okay. I forgot about that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So like, if I left on my own will, yeah, you should feel shots fired. But now, I was a casualty of Pearl Natali, so we good.
Okay. All right. All right. Cool. Bet. So there's something that you said that perfectly segues into the next component of genes, which was talent. And you said, like, what do we do, or what do we have? I believe I heard you say this. What resources do we have that can help us get to that next level, to get us around the corner? And that's exactly what talent is. Talent, if passion, and I didn't say this, so I'm going to articulate this about passion. Passion, the thing that you focus on that you hate in your environment, in your workplace, wherever it is something that ultimately is broken and impacts you and other people in a negative way. So even before I go, I need to back up again before I jumped into talent too soon. I want to give you a real life example. So when I was workshopping this idea, I was still in Illinois, and I went to this elementary school, and they called me there because I knew the principal, and she was like, "Look, can you deal with some boys that I have? There's 10 little boys that they're in the third, fourth, and fifth grade. They're on IEPs, which we would have called special ed back in the day, individual education plans." He was like, "Can you just chop it up with them for like an hour, like one day a week?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So I thought, hey, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna talk to them about genius and see what they feel about it, right? So instantly, as soon as I sat down with them, it was like, "Hey, each of you is a genius." They looked at me like, "Dude, you in the wrong class. I don't know who you think you're talking to." Like, they were offended that I dare put a positive affirmation on it, because all they were used to hearing was ADD, ADHD, disruptive in class, emotionally imbalanced, right? And they got used to that, to the point where, Brandon, after I tried to affirm them, they instantly started roasting one another, and they thought that was hilarious. It was like calling each other waterheads. So I'm like, wait a minute, y'all are more comfortable receiving negative affirmations than positive affirmations. I said, okay, let's keep talking though. So then I said, all right, this is a question that I can get anybody to answer on, especially when it's like you. So I said, tell me what you hate though. Brandon, what do you think it is? Going back to this metaphor, this quote about this fish, if you could have asked and interviewed the fish and asked it, what do you hate? Thinking that it would have told you that I hate this tree. This tree is making me feel stupid, or I hate this system that has me thinking that I need to climb this tree to prove myself. So if you think of it in that terms, when I asked this question to these 10 little boys, who, by the way, could never agree on anything, but they all universally said almost at the same time that they hated the same thing. What do you think they told me they hated?
I'd say school, but what?
School. Absolutely. So at this point, the teacher is in her back of her, she's scratching her head, like, what are you about to, why are you talking to them about this? And I was like, but this makes sense though. Like this system, the school system is broken, just like the world is broken. There's enough stuff in the world to hate because there's enough stuff broken. But when I was talking to these little boys, and the teacher at the same time, and the teacher's aide was feeling me. He was like, I hear what you're saying. I'm like, look, I expect that answer because this system is making you feel like you don't belong. This system is making you feel like a fish out of water. And so I said, let me tell you though, how you can fix this system. I said, look, if you're telling me that you hate school, but if you're listening to what I'm trying to put down, the thing that you hate is the thing that you were meant to fix. So I said, if you're telling me that you hate school, then I'm looking at 10 future educators. And they got real quiet on me. Their eyes got big. They started backing up from me. I'm like, nah, why are you backing away though? I said, let me keep expanding your mind though. I was like, look, there's 8 different learning styles. And so at most, you're probably only being taught from 3, right? So that means they're ignoring 5 other learning styles, which you probably fall in that bucket of, because teaching in schools typically comes from a logical perspective, your left brain thinker, or a visual perspective where you're absorbing information through your eyes, or auditory where you're getting it through the hearing. But what if you're kinesthetic? What if you got to be moving around, but you keep getting told, sit down, be still, don't move? Then you're going to hate your environment. What if you are exploratory, expeditionary? You need to put your hands on things, but you're told, keep your hands to yourself, stop touching stuff. What if you're a creative thinker, you're a right brain thinker, then now the information that you're supposed to be learning that's being given to you is coming off like another language. And you're like, I don't feel like I fit in here. I feel like a fish out of water. I'm being pushed to the side. I mean, something is wrong with third, fourth, and fifth graders being in the same class all day, right?
Mm.
So why wouldn't they hate their environment? But now I'm telling them you're equipped with the very thing that they're telling you makes you not stand out. Your learning style, if you run towards this limitation instead of away from it, now your learning style becomes your teaching style, and you're going to reach other people who have the same learning style as you. Now you're plugging in the gaps in the system. Now you're presenting the solution to the system that the system is saying it doesn't need.
It speaks to what we do or what I do in higher ed. And when it comes to communicating with various populations, so we have to deal with the traditional student fresh out of high school. We have to deal with the adult learner. We have to deal with the non-traditional student. We have to deal with the grad student. The idea is there's no one way to communicate or engage these populations.
Yes.
You have to be able to be flexible, be fluid, be understand. You, more importantly, you have to focus on inclusion. You have to focus on diversifying your efforts to make it a more robust, actually, environment and community within within your university, because that's what's going to make you dynamic, diverse, engaging, because people from the outside who've had that, exactly what you're talking about, different types of learning experiences or cultural experience, they'll be able to infuse that into that culture of care, is what I always utilize in my affirmations when I say things on campus. Is what we're trying to do is a culture of care. So the idea is engaging all these different entities and actually being able to accommodate them, again, to make a more dynamic experience of a university and experience for our students. So one big example of that is how us in higher education are moving away from traditional testing.
Okay,
Because
good.
we know that that is culturally biased, is not inclusive of or a great indicator of success when it comes to your education performance. You can't, we're talking about the kinetic learner, the artistic individual. They might perform extremely poorly on that test, but they will be a dynamic personality to have on your campus. Independent, and your campus actually might be that avenue that allows them to shine where they weren't able to do so in primary school, secondary school. It's that post-education experience because of the way that they can think outside the box. You challenge us as an institution to become more dynamic. I don't want you to fit in our box. I want to fit in your box. I want to blow your box up so I can make it better for more individuals like you to look at us as an institution.
I love it. That's where it's at. So what would you say? I mean, I've already kind of identified what I feel like your talent is, but it's good to give a person a space to self-identify, on their own. So what would you say your talent is?
Supporting and developing others.
Yeah, I agree. I agree in what you've been telling me, what you're doing at Bowie State. So the last part of the equation is really simple. Your purpose in life is to figure out what your talent is, what it is that most of the time, the talent that we have that's the most useful, we overlook it. We take it for granted. Most of the time we fail to understand that it's generational. Like we'll look at a Kobe Bryant and a Steph Curry and entertainers and say, well, that's in the family, but we don't do it for ourselves. I love the fact that you started this off talking about your mother, because it shows that this talent is generational, that it is. When somebody tells me that they don't have a talent, I tell them, look at your parents, look at your grandparents. Tell me what they were doing. Tell me what they're doing now as a hobby that they had to maybe push to the side because they had to provide for you. But that thing is on the inside of you, right? And so your relational talent that you got from your mom, that you observed her operate in, and this ability to unite people is what is your tool. And you pick up that tool and you apply it to the thing that's broken in this world, which is what your passion is identifying to you. And when you do that, you'll unlock your genius and you'll unlock the genius of other people around you. Now, here's the insight that I have for you based off what you're telling me. The people who are going to lead this country and lead the education field into the next level of growth and the next level of sustained growth, especially coming out of this particular down pattern that we see in enrollment, are the HBCUs, because we've had less resources, we've been faced with limitations, and we've had to get creative in how we service our students and how we identify their different traits that allow them to shine. Because we were in a country that told us, hey, look, if you don't fit in this little box, you do not belong. And so we've had to innovate for generations to get people into college. And now that we've got them into college, what we're doing is, what Bowie State is doing is providing this place where everyone is thriving. But now it's a benchmark, and it's opening up the gates for other people to say, maybe we need to be doing things differently. And so everything starts at home first. So we got to tend to our own people. But the patterns that you're setting, Dr. Vinson, are patterns that other institutions that are not HBCUs are going to begin to seek Bowie State after, to seek your department after, and to seek after you and say, like, what is it that you're doing? And it's going to revolutionize the education system in this country, because we know it's broken. And what you're doing and how you're doing it is something that has not been done in a way like this before, that's really going to allow so many more people to flow into this way of thinking, this institutional system that's been set up, that you're restructuring from the inside out. And I don't know if this resonates with you, but I feel like it probably does, and you're probably already working on doing it and being called upon to speak in venues and locations to talk about what it is that you are doing, so that you can begin so other people can begin to pattern themselves off of this growth that you're experiencing in a time of lack.
For one, I accept that anointing out there, and definitely that recognition. And honestly, yes. And the part of the reason why I have been to this point so successful at BSU goes from the experience that I had at predominantly white institutions, at majority serving institutions. Because again, when I said I don't accept mediocrity, what I've seen before at a lot of HBCUs, honestly, is mediocrity. It is the idea of, we're doing this because this is the way we've always done it. That bothers me every time I hear it, because the way you were doing it 20 years ago, dealing with that population of student, whatever have you, that's a whole different generation of students right now.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about millennials. We're old now, or I'm old now. We're talking about centennials. We're talking about individuals who expect things like this. And you're saying that you're going to put them in a process that has them standing in lines in the heat and for officers to meet with officers. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that right now, because you know
where's
why?
the QR codes for enrollment, right?
I've seen these PWIs who would never think to have their student do these things. So why will we? Why? And so introducing that, introducing a 24/7 chat bot that's supported by artificial intelligence, creating a pre-orientation platform for students to keep them engaged from when they're admitted to when they actually start school, because again, you want to account for summer melt. Giving them dynamic call centers to be able to address 90% of their student issues before they get escalated to campus. It's again thinking about that service that we want to offer, and that experience that our students should be able to expect at coming to an HBCU that's not different if they decide to go to University of Maryland, College Park, if they decide to go to Georgetown, they decide to go to George Washington. You shouldn't feel like you're settling for anything on our side. You can't settle for anything on our side. And that's what I like to infuse in my team. And they're saying, you know what, you're right. We don't. We have to think outside the box.
What you're speaking to, I'm gonna close this up, but what you're speaking to is about tradition. And HBCUs are very much about tradition. That's the only thing that we had that was a rich history, was our traditions, right? But now it's time to put that in the archives and say, hey, look, we had a season of tradition. That was great, right? But now it's time to start new traditions. It's time to be bellwethers, if you will, who are innovating and doing things new that haven't been done before, to stay ahead of the curve. And that's what you've been, I hear it now. That's what you've been saying has been happening at Bowie this entire, at least in your tenure. And that's what you're going to help usher into the future. So, hey, man, it doesn't surprise me that you already operate in it. But like I said, I wanted to recognize it and let the world hear it, So I appreciate you taking this time. That's it for us. This has been Inkwell Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I'm your host, motivational speaker, author, poet, minister, all that, Reggie Key. And this has been my genius guest, Dr. Brandon Vinson.
Man, much appreciated, man. This is a phenomenal series, brother.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. And look, it's my uncommon cue to see the genius in you.
All right, man. Happy Father's Day, bro.
Hey, appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at Inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.